welcome Hoosier fans to another victorious episode of the Assembly Call, as today your Indiana Hoosiers survived a road trip to Nebraska by a final score of 84-76, which moves IU to 8-5 and 3-3 in the league. This was a tale of two halves for sure. IU came out really hot in the first half, hit a bunch of threes, fell in love with the three, some would say, and got out to a 31-13 lead. They gave up a decent amount of that lead by halftime. And then in the second half, really got blitzed by Nebraska for a large portion of it, really had some defensive breakdowns, and struggled to get the ball inside to Trayce Jackson-Davis. Instead, ended far too many possessions settling for three-point shots, but IU did buckle down the stretch. TJD asserted himself a bit more, scoring 6 points in a row at one key juncture and making a number of free throws down the stretch and scoring, I believe, all of his 15 points in the second half. So road wins are hard to come by in the Big Ten, so you don't want to totally look past it or take it for granted. I guess Trayce had 13 of his 15 in the second half. So certainly one you won't take for granted, and to get back to 3-3 in the league was a must at this point in the most winnable road game you're going to get in this league over the course of the game. But certainly a lot to discuss based on how this game played out and how IU lost the lead and struggled for long stretches of the second half. But we'll talk about all that here on the show tonight. I'm your host, Andy Bottoms, and I'm here with the coach, Brian Tonsoni, and our special guest, Chris Williams, a.k.a. IU-Artifacts, and we'll break it all down for you on this edition of the Assembly Call IU Postgame Show. And let's start this show the way we start every show, and that is with our Hoosier Proud banner moment. There were a couple that I thought of, but a pretty big basket from a potentially unexpected source. It was 77-75, I think under 2 minutes to play. Jerome Hunter takes a fall-away jump shot from the baseline, missed the shot short, but followed his own shot, picked it back up, and put it in to extend IU's lead to 79-75. And it was really a big basket. It was one of the only baskets during that stretch that Trayce Jackson-Davis was not involved in. Jerome played another solid game for IU and continues to emerge and play well. They had some audio of him leading up to this game, and he just talked about how he was really starting to feel more healthy and get back to what he wanted to be. So he ended up with 9 points and 6 rebounds, 3 of those rebounds on the offensive end, including the one that was the banner moment for a huge putback at that juncture of the game. So that will be tonight's banner moment. And our banner moment, as always, is brought to you by our friends at Home Field Apparel, who is now in their 4th season of sponsoring the Assembly Call. And with winter here and hoodie weather officially arrived, you need to make your way over to their website, homefieldapparel.com. They have something unique for everyone, especially IU fans, and all of their apparel is printed on the softest, warmest, most comfortable, and most washable materials you'll find anywhere. One of a few suggestions. I purchased my first crew neck over the holidays and picked up one of the old IU football designs, so have really enjoyed that, but also picked up some basketball shirts from both UC Irvine and Fresno State, as well as a couple of the new IU items that they rolled out around the bowl game. So lots to get out there, not just IU gear. Home Field has apparel from more than 90 different colleges and universities, and new ones are being added all the time. The designs are so unique, interesting, and vintage that you may end up like Coach and I, where you're buying shirts and hoodies for schools you barely heard of just because you like the design. I believe Coach tonight is sporting a Home Field shirt as well from, or perhaps not, Mississippi State, I believe. Did I see that correctly? So we have heard of Mississippi State, so that doesn't quite feed into the schools you haven't heard of. But anyway, just really comfortable stuff. And as always, you can save on your Home Field order by using the promo code Assembly20 at checkout. It'll give you 20% off your entire order throughout the year. So go to homefieldapparel.com, load up your shopping cart, and enter Assembly20 at checkout to get that 20% off. Again, that's homefieldapparel.com. All right, it's time to move the ball, find the open man, and get some opening thoughts from the rest of our team. Coach, I'll throw it to you first. It's Tonsoni time. What are your main takeaways from the game tonight?
Well, I think it was a must-win situation, obviously, with the Big Ten being as tough as it is. Nebraska is obviously the worst team in the Big Ten, and after losing a game to Northwestern when they were hot and won their 3 games in a row there against good teams, you really needed this after a tough loss. So the victory matters. Obviously, we'll talk about what went down in the game, and a lot of that is good, and there's quite a bit that it was not so good in a close game like this on the road. But Indiana survived a team that got its mojo going in the second half. And a lot of times when we watch our team as fans, it's always what we do well or what we don't do well. And we're playing another team, and sometimes other teams do things well and don't do things well. And you just got to do things better. And Indiana was able to survive going down by 3 in the second half and didn't hang their heads and found something to come back and win the game and put the game away late. That has been something that has been missing in some of the bigger losses. Indiana hasn't played well down the stretch. So, you win in the Big Ten, you get to 3-3. You look at every bracketologist has Indiana 8, 9, 10 seed somewhere right now, despite the 8-5 record or 7-5 record going in. There's some things to keep looking forward to, and a big game coming up on Thursday. So I thought there was some positives. Guards played well. I thought Trayce Jackson-Davis did not, and that hurt us. But I think Nebraska did a great job of taking TJD away. So, I'm not sitting here elated. I'm more relieved than anything because we can talk about a win instead of a loss to Nebraska. Because I think a loss would have been devastating for the team. And so that's an avoidance night tonight more than anything else, and we'll take it.
Yeah, I agree. It would have been truly devastating, given just on the heels of playing so well against Wisconsin, to turn back around and lose a game like this to Nebraska. And so perhaps that's the right frame of mind. There's definitely lots to talk about on both sides. Chris, what are your opening thoughts on the IU victory tonight?
Well, I mean, kind of piggybacking off what Coach said, being the team that snaps the 20-game losing streak for Nebraska, you think people have been already talking poorly about the team when they don't play well. It would have been just 10 times worse. But they buckled down. They persevered. I liked how Rob was very aggressive to start the game. I think when he plays really aggressive, good things happen. He was looking for his shots. He wasn't hesitant to take shots. And obviously it was a tale of two halves with a 3-point shooting. We ended up just shy of 38%, which, it's been around the average we've been all year. But I agree that I thought that Nebraska, we got a little too comfortable with the 3-point shot when they kind of continued to collapse on Trayce through the most of the game. The ball movement wasn't as crisp in the second half, and I think that cost us a lot of open shots. But again, I think we had some situations where we had some people shooting that didn't need to be shooting, especially early in the shot clock. But we grinded it out. A win was a win. I think those 4 straight free throws down the stretch by Trayce was big, despite the fact that we only shot 60% from the free throw line for the game, which is not good. But a win's a win. And like I said, you got to win a game like that against that team, and you got to get ready for Purdue on Thursday.
All right. So let's kind of go through, I guess, chronologically, because I think perhaps that makes the most sense to think about this game. So first half begins, IU gets off to a really hot start, led by Rob Finney and even to a lesser extent Al Durham. Those guys combined for 26 points in the first half. 16 of those for Rob. He had set a new career high, I believe, by not too far into in about the middle of the second half. It felt like those guys combined to go 5 of 8 for 3 as a team. IU was 7 of 13. Christian Lander came in and banked one in. Jerome Hunter hit one as well. And that was a half that saw Trayce Jackson-Davis score just 2 points, and Race Thompson scored just 2 points. So you get 4 points from your starting front court. And IU got off to a really good start. There was a sequence where Rob hit back-to-back threes. One was a really nice relocation that Galloway found him on. The one after that was a step back. And I think that the second one of those put IU up 31-13. Things kind of went south from there, but let's talk about the guard play that led up to that point before we talk about what went wrong. I mean, Coach, is this just a case of Rob really stacking positive games on one another and really gaining confidence, or are you seeing, is it that simple, or is there more to what he was doing in his aggressiveness that you saw in that early run?
No, I think it's that simple. I think Rob's starting to see that he can do some things, and it's things that he's been asked to do for several years now. And when you see the ball go in, you get that confidence, and he was really looking for his shot. and he was more aggressive with the basketball. And in fact, early I thought Al passed up a couple shots that you got to take. When you got a packed-in defense, you got to take some threes from the right people. I agree with Chris. We'll talk about that later. Early in the shot clock, I think some of the people taking shots shouldn't be taking shots, but you need Rob. And then there was a time when Lander was in and Rob was off the ball, and they were running him off some screens. I would like to see a little bit more of that for Rob. But the guards got to score. And I thought offensively tonight the guards did a nice job. Obviously, it was tough guarding off the bounce. I tweeted from the assembly call account early that this is going to be a game of, guard to dribble, guard to dribble. When Indiana was able to guard the dribble, they were able to get some key stops. When they weren't in that second half, like 15 of 17 possessions, Nebraska was able to score because the guards couldn't. Guards in the perimeters, and sometimes even the big guys got caught in dribble action. But it was good to see. You got to take shots. You can't just force it into TJD when he's got three guys in the lane suffocating him, and he's going to get double teamed. And TJD did a nice job of dribbling out and finding people. You got to be ready, have shot prep, get your feet ready, and catch. You're most open when you catch the basketball. That's what the guards did tonight. They were ready to shoot, and I think that's going to be needed for Indiana to win games the rest of the way. So that's something, obviously, again, frustrated that we had to sweat one out, but boy, if we can keep building on that, then people are going to have to start coming out a little bit, which will open up the inside because, of the guard play. So I thought it was really good all the way around throughout the whole game offensively.
Yeah, Rob now double figures in 3 of the last 4 games after reaching that point in the first 2 games and having a pretty big lull in the middle there. So definitely positive. Chris, you mentioned a little bit about Rob in your opening thoughts, but the thing we didn't mention, Rob went down in the first half, and it wasn't clear that he was going to be able to come back in. I don't know that he was as assertive in the second half when he was back in, but didn't necessarily seem to be limping or anything of that nature, which is a positive sign for a team that's been pretty snake bitten by injuries. It feels like, but Chris, as you watch these veteran guards now, that's something that people watch for IU that should be a positive for a team given how guard driven college basketball is. Your thoughts on the play of Al and Rob, particularly early in tonight's game?
Well, I thought, to me, one of the best lineups we had on the floor, especially in the first half, is when we went Al and Rob and then Leal with Hunter and Trayce. I thought that really worked well to start. And I think, again, when Rob's aggressive, good things happen. And he wasn't, like I said earlier, he wasn't hesitant to shoot the ball. And when it was falling, the confidence is there. I did think that if Rob was going to be out, the rest of that game, I don't think we would have won, considering how poorly we played, especially the transition defense, and the fact that they were just playing that isolation, driving and getting. And I do think to some extent that some of those fouls were anticipation calls on the part of the refs, but I think Al really played well in terms. He had some really good drives, especially that one when he switched and laid it in with his right hand at the end of the game. But I think, the guards really dictate a lot about the success, because you can talk all the time about Trayce, but, Coach made a good point. When they're collapsing on Trayce every single time, somebody's got to be ready to shoot the ball, or somebody's got to be ready to anticipate the pass and find the open man if that's going to happen, because I think we're going to continue to see some kind of matchup zone like this in the future. And it's been our MO the last couple of years where, we've had a really highly potent big man and not the most efficient shooters to kick it out to outside. So, I was very pleasant surprised to see the shots falling in the first half, but when the shots weren't falling and we kept continuing to try to depend on shooting those threes, even from our guards, we just kind of we wavered from it. But I think that I'd like to see more continuation with Al and Rob driving to the basket and trying to get the fouls and getting to the foul line more and converting. Obviously, we need to convert it, but I think when they're aggressive, it really plays into the rest of what we want to do out there.
So then the next stretch of the game, which was a fairly, I say stretch as if it was a short period of time. It was really the latter part of the first half. IU let let Nebraska back in the game, get it back to single digits for a little while, did push it back up to 12. And then for a large chunk of the second half, IU really settled for the 3-point shots that they took in the first half. As you guys mentioned, some early in the shot clock that you weren't really what you would want when you're drawing things up offensively, had long stretches where they struggled to score. And then you saw what we've seen a number of other times where struggles offensively, both individually and collectively, lead to some lengthy defensive breakdowns. IU gave up scores on 13 of 15 possessions to Nebraska at one point in the second half, while all the while not scoring very much on their own. So Coach, as you mentioned earlier, it was very much this reminded me a lot of the Penn State game, quite honestly, where they're just trying to find matchups, trying to find somebody to attack off the dribble and potentially kick out for threes. It wasn't sophisticated offense that Nebraska was running. I'm not even sure it was good offense in a lot of stretches. But do you just attribute that kind of defensive breakdown for a team that we've seen play really well defensively in stretches? Is it we're not shooting the ball well, so the defense struggles? Is it matchup based and saying we just have too many guys who can't keep their own man in front of them? Like, what do you when you watch this game? What do you attribute a stretch of play that poor for that long? What do you attribute that to?
Yeah, in this situation, it's just we had guys that were struggling keeping the ball in front of them and guarding the dribble. When you have no Armaan Franklin as who is your defensive stopper, and he's not out there to guard the second best bounce. Finney's doing a great job, and then Al Durham is more of an offensive guy than a defensive guy. Trey, Galloway, Leal, freshmen who are learning the game, and you got an NBA coach on the other side who it's NBA offense is what it is. It's move the ball till you find an isolation where you have an advantage, and then you have permission to drive the ball, and then where help comes, then you find the rotation. You jump up and throw, and you shoot the three. And that's what Hoiberg's going to play at Nebraska. That's what Penn State. That's what teams have to play sometimes that maybe don't have a talent like TJD to get the ball to, or some of the teams, a Garza or some of that. You just spread people out and see if you can be quicker and faster than them. And right now, this Indiana team, you play the pack line, but if you play the pack line, you're going to give up threes because you're trying to stop the drive. But you must stop the drive. And without Armaan out here, it was a tough time to play Nebraska. Not making excuses because you just got to lock down. And I thought for the most part in the first half, Indiana did a really good job. I think there was one stretch where they got a little run. Once it was 31-13, and then it got back down to 31-21 or something. There was an 8-0 run there. They were more intense, and I thought what happened is they lost their intensity a little bit defensively. Their closeouts, their ability to beat someone on the first step, and I thought sometimes they over-rotated a little bit. And so, it's a matchup situation. Sometimes you just run into teams that are going to be very difficult, and when you finally break it down, other than that 13 segment where it went from a 14 or a 15-point lead at 56-41 to us down 3, which was very important. I'm not trying to dismiss it. I thought Indiana guarded that style without Armaan Franklin rather well. It just caught up to him, and that's why it got back. And then there was a timeout, down one timeout, and the defense started playing again. And so sometimes you just got to refocus your guys. And in that last segment, then they didn't score, but I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 possessions, and I counted less than 50% of their possessions they scored after that timeout, and that's what allowed Indiana to get back in the game and end up winning stretch. So the defense was there; it just wasn't there for 40 minutes, and it's got to be there for 40 minutes, especially against a team like this on their home court that was hungry and had a week off. Matchup problems today, but they found a way.
Yeah, I think the personnel piece is one that is worth mentioning because Rob got in a little bit of foul trouble in the second half, and Archie had at one point that about as veteran a lineup as IU can play at this point with Rob, Al, Jerome at the 3, Race, and Trayce, and it wasn't very long after that Rob picked up his 4th and had to go out for a bit, and Anthony Leal came in to spell him. But I do think personnel plays a factor in it. I think tired legs are a little bit of a factor, but it's one of those where you're going to find teams that are going to try to pick on those matchups and pick on those young guys. So IU's going to have to figure out how to calm some of those runs. Although I do think your point about the timeout was a good one, because I think it was a time in the first half as well. They got on a little bit of a run, and Archie took a timeout pretty fast and tried to stop the momentum a little bit. And down the stretch, like you said, the defense did pick itself back up a little bit.
One quick thing too is the pack line's designed to stop the drive. So if they're driving the pack line, they're going to drive any defense. Okay, so if you were playing heavy denial on the wing and reversal, if you were playing a matchup zone or whatever, every defense that is out there in college basketball is designed that you have to stop the ball. And you have to stop the ball, and if you don't, you got to rotate and have proper rotation on the backside. I mean, that's just how you teach defense. But if you can change defense all you want. They're going to find an isolation, and they're going to guard you. One of the things I learned a long time ago is sometimes you match up on a zone, a 3-2 zone, just go 5 out. So every defender has a man, just toss the ball around, find the weakest defender, and drive them. I mean, that's been out there. That kind of stuff's been out there forever. So we got to get better at the technique of guarding the bounce in order to stop these spread teams.
So, Chris, let's talk a little bit about the offense during that stretch. Like I said, it a lot of possessions ended in missed 3-pointers. Race Thompson made one to start the second half on IU's first possession. Then IU proceeded to miss 9 in a row before Anthony Leal hit one late, and they ended up 2 of 11. So they made the first, missed 9, made the last one. But I think the larger point, if you look at the second half box score, was probably who's taking them more than that they were taken. Trey Galloway was 0 for 3. Race Thompson 1 for 2. Took that first one. I think just really shot clock was getting a bit late. He was open. Rob took 2. So not really an issue there. And then Leal was 1 of 3, although I thought all his were wide open. But Galloway for the game was 0 for 4 shooting threes and was 4 for 4 on twos, which maybe makes it a little bit too easy to make a point about whether he should be shooting threes or not. But I thought it was shot selection was not good, and it was compounded by who took the shots during that stretch. And really, while Nebraska was packing it back in and really trying to prevent TJD from getting the ball, I thought IU settled far too often during that stretch. And that, in addition to the poor defense, really let the game get away from him for that stretch in the second half.
Yeah, Galloway's shooting was kind of, question mark for me, because every one of his shots were flat. Every one of his shots really did not have a chance to go in. And I think the problem is, and we've kind of discussed the transition defense being so poor, when you're settling for those jump shots, you kind of put yourself in a position with Nebraska running and gunning it to where we were getting beat so easily in transition. And I think, honestly, this is the second game in a row where we've seen the transition defense. It's been on and off this year. But I think, to me, a lot of it seemed like in the second half, Trayce was not trying to establish himself as much, even when, he would do a high pick and roll and kind of, cutting to the basket. It just didn't seem like there was any opportunity for him to establish himself, or if he was getting the ball, in the first half, there was this beautiful moment right about the 7:30 mark where he got the ball and he had Rob dumped it off to him, and he easily found Alpha. I mean, it was a perfect pass. And that's one of the things that Trayce, I think, a lot of times is not given credit for, his passing ability, and hit Alpha a wide open 3. But in the second half, I think we just got in that habit where we just kind of do this weave dribble. And I think sometimes I think back to the 2004 days with Bracy Wright and Marshall Strickland. It was just back to back to back. And then we'd heave it at the buzzer to see, hopefully, if Bracy would hit 30% of his shots. I think we just settled too much for it. I'm not too upset that we kept shooting, but I think we just got out of our comfort zone, and that put us into such a bad position defensively that, to me, I think one of the things that it would be curious to see moving forward is, Galloway has the driving ability, and I don't think Leal is quite there with that. But I wonder if we may start to see Leal possibly starting in place for Galloway, just because of the offensive ability that he brings with the more reliable shooting. I don't know, because it seems like Trey fits into that mold as that drive and dish guy, and he has that ability, although sometimes we do see him force it. But clearly he's not a guy that you want, with the second most attempts on the team in terms, Rob had 6 attempts, but Galloway, Durham, and Leal all had 4 attempts, and I would rather see the latter two be the one shooting those. So that to me is a concern if we're getting to a situation where Trey's getting too comfortable and feeling like he has to take that shot.
All right, so let's talk TJD here briefly. I think that's the other big storyline. As I mentioned, he only had 2 points in the first half, got 13 in the second half, and a lot of those, I think 10 of those over the last portion of the game, and was a lot more assertive in that scenario. But I think Nebraska deserves some credit. They really packed it in. They really tried to crowd him as he rolled off of some of these screens, although I think to the point Chris made, I think Chronic Hoosier even had a tweet somewhat to that effect of it was a lot of wasted motion because he wasn't really cutting all that hard and call for the ball. Nobody was really looking to get it to him at times. I thought Leal, for a stretch, was the best guy at actually entering the post and getting him the ball. But he was really quiet in the first half and really quiet emotionally and just from a leadership perspective, did take charge a bit down the stretch, had a nice drive where he got the ball out close to the 3-point line and just finally decided to drive and score. And then he hit 2 sets of free throws right after that, scored 6 straight points. That was a really big moment for IU. So he came up big in that segment of play and finishes the game with 15 points and 11 rebounds. To go with 3 blocks, but it just didn't feel like that energy level that he brought at times in the Wisconsin game that really was nearly the difference in that game was really on display. Just didn't see a lot of emotion from him. And Coach, what do you attribute that to? Is it a guy who's struggling to get things going offensively, and then kind of that just affects other parts of his game, or how do you kind of process the performance from Trayce tonight overall, given the kind of fluctuation from one half to the next?
First of all, it's quite an effort when I'm going to be disappointed in his play, and he got a double-double, a 15-11, and he kind of helped close out the game. So
I know,
the young man, when he has an off,
I know
when he has an off night, it's kind of. But here's the thing: it is really difficult at whatever level you are to play and be the focus of defense every night and every night and every night. And he's got to mentally be a little tougher to know that, okay, other people are hitting right now. It'll open up other things, and then I'll get my touches at some point. You got to let the game come to you. I thought today, looking at his body language, he let the struggle to get catches early affect his play, and there was no emotion. And I thought he didn't guard very well in the first half when he had the opportunity to guard, and so I thought the lack of offense affected, and that happens in a game of basketball. It's not good, and what you got to do is kind of talk to him, and he's had stretches where I think that's happened so far this year. But if you're going to be the MVP, and if you're going to be the guy who carries Indiana, you've got to be emotionally connected even when things aren't going well. And so that was disappointing in the first half. And as usual, he finds a way to bounce back and to contribute, which is a positive. And boy, did he ever, with some key rebounds and some foul shooting down the stretch. And so, again, 15 points, 11 rebounds is a solid day. But it wasn't TJD's best effort, I think. And he's just got to figure that out and understand that he's a marked man. But it is not fun being that marked man at any level and having all the defense set for you. Because it's just tedious to try to play through it, but you got to be prepared for it. You've earned it, and it's a sign of respect, and you got to play through it.
Chris, anything from your vantage point on TJD before we take a quick break?
Yeah, I kind of agree with Coach. He's got to be more assertive, especially when he has an ability to kind of just seal it toward the basket. And I think that he's doing what he can to call for the ball, but I think that he has to take command sometimes and draw that foul and get the ball toward the basket. And I think sometimes he may be timid with that. And I think we saw it at times today, especially in the first half, but he did come back really strongly in the second half. We just need to see that as much as we can consistently. But I also think that he's just getting gassed out there with the amount of minutes that he has to play because of our deficiency with size. So that plays a role too.
All right, well, after that marathon first segment, we'll continue our breakdown of IU's 84-76 victory at Nebraska. We'll come back and point out the meaningful moments you might have missed and then go inside the numbers to highlight the most important statistical notes from the game. You're listening to the Assembly Call. Stick with us.
Hey guys, it's Gene Steratore, CBS officiating analyst and retired Big Ten basketball official. You know I have never listened to the assembly call, and to be honest, I don't intend to. But if you listen, make sure you ignore anything Ryan says about officiating. He's really good from the seat of his pants, but I wouldn't trust him on the court with a whistle around his neck. Time has proven him wrong on virtually everything. Take care. We'll talk soon.
All right, welcome back to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. I'm Andy Bottoms here with the coach, Brian Tonsoni, and Chris Williams, a.k.a. IUArtifacts, and we were breaking down IU's 84-76 victory over Nebraska. Had to break out the Gene Steratore after the officiating from the Wisconsin game since I wasn't able to be on that show, so figured it was as appropriate a time as ever to throw that one in there. So now it's time for the meaningful moment that you might have missed. I had a few things written down. There was a play early in the game where Race Thompson, there was a loose ball. Everybody kind of ran after. He dove on the floor, got the ball, kicked it to Trey Galloway for a layup early on. I think that was within one of the first few possessions. Gave IU, I think, a 4-2 lead at the time. And the Race came back and the play after that made a nice post move inside. And I thought overall was a solid game for Race that we've come to expect. He ended up with 11 points, 5 rebounds, a couple assists, and a steal. But I thought that play, just good hustle to set the tone. And I think that was somewhat emblematic of how IU started the game. They weren't really able to maintain that for, I guess, as long as we might have liked. But Chris, thoughts on Race's play? I think the first basket he made, he turned over his left shoulder, and I thought there were opportunities for him to do that late in the Wisconsin game where he would get the ball in the post, and he made a quick move that direction early in this one, which was a good thing. But thoughts on Race's performance today?
Yeah, I kept wondering how often we were going to see Nebraska double down on Race, especially when he and Trayce were in the game today. And I saw there was a couple opportunities where Race had that one-on-one, and he does have such a good touch around the basket when he is aggressive towards it. But I did see him play. I thought he did really well overall. I think I didn't like the matchup that they had on him defensively against, I can't think of the guy's name. The guy was 5 to 6 from the 3-point line. They kept switching on that, and he ended up guarding that. I didn't like his defensive play during that stretch, but I thought offensively, he has that ability to step out and hit the three. He is solid from the foul line. I think, when he hit that three early on the second half, I think that's one of those where, I would hope Archie would want him to be shooting that shot. But I think to me, he has to be someone that has that interior ability, especially when Trayce is not in there. I just would like to see him continue to be aggressive. I think that to me, I think when he ended up with 11 points, he was really good from the field. Like I said, he had those 2 free throws. I would like to see him get 6 or 8 attempts from the foul line each game. I don't know if it's one of those things where he's just not obviously going to be the interior scorer when it's him and Trayce in the game. But all in all, I thought it was a solid effort. I think, there's so much riding on him, especially with we keep talking about our lack of interior defense with Joey out. But I thought he's been really, really solid all the way around and continue to this game.
Coach, one of the other plays that I had flagged, IU is down 69-66. Anthony Leal, after IU had missed, as I mentioned earlier, 9 straight three-pointers, rises up and drilled one to tie the game at 69. Leal that was his only make of the game, but again, he got 21 minutes and grabbed 4 rebounds. Just continuing to grow into his role on this team. I know we talked earlier about, is he a guy that potentially works his way into the starting lineup, perhaps in place of Trey Galloway? But Leal, I comparative to some of the other 3-point shots that were taken, I didn't feel like he took a bad one as he was there, and I think that's what he's on the floor to do. Took open shots, just missed a few of them, but that was a really big shot at a critical moment as IU had given up that 3-point, was down by 3 at the time and hit a big shot to do it. So what did you see from Leal today and kind of how his progression has continued during this recent run of games?
Obviously, that three was just huge, and I agree with you that's a moment that we need to talk about. And it's the guts to take it, too. Your team's down 3 on the road to Nebraska. Everyone knows you're supposed to win that game, and you were up 15, and now you're down 3, and to be able to rise up. But it's one of those actions that they run where they ball screen away from Leal, and then what happens is when you have a roll, that Leal's man is likely the tag responsibility. So good teams, Cassius Winston did this at Michigan State. When you run high pick and roll, you throw it all the way back, with the diagonal skip. And Indiana's been doing that, and they've been doing that to Leal the last couple of games. I really like that action. And so him being in the game gives them another threat and another way to run some offense that they didn't have. You're not going to run that play for Galloway. And so, that was nice to see. But here's the thing about Leal that I like. 2 things. One, I love his post feeds. I think, and there were times when I thought it was going to go in and he didn't, because I trust him in making the right decision in feeding the post. Now, he threw one that was a good decision about a quarter second too late, and there's a turnover, which might end up being a key turnover, but that was aggressive to me. And it was kind of a high-low diagonal pass. So he had a turnover being aggressive there post-feed, but I really trust him in trying to make the right decision. And you see both Galloway and Leal in positions to feed the ball to Trayce Jackson-Davis coming out of timeouts, first plays of halves. They run that little down screen for the wing. He catches it, and then that screener goes and cross screens for TJD. But the post-feeding of Anthony Leal is tremendous. And here's the other thing. The only deficiency that I see in Leal right now is just his foot speed defensively. And he'll get in a jump rope, and he'll get in that weight room, and that'll get better and better and better as he matures athletically at the college level. But he's always, I think, in the right position most of the time. No one's perfect. But I see a guy who knows what's going on. He's telling other people where to go. He's running offense the correct way. He's a student of the game. There's a reason he is Indiana Mr. Basketball. And you're seeing it out there right now. And it's just athleticism that'll stop him from driving, or he'll have difficulty like tonight. They were picking on him. They were picking on Galloway. They were picking on him. They were trying to pick on Hunter, and that's what the defense does. But, man, I enjoy watching that young man play. And I know we're 8-5, and it was a kind of a sloppy win today, but I enjoy watching those 2 freshmen out there playing, and Leal is just fun, and I think you'll see more minutes out of him, whether he starts or not. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, he was the guy when, like I said, they had that veteran lineup in. When Finney picked up the foul, they went to Leal instead of Galloway, and I think that made all the sense in the world. To your point, Coach, I think he's as good as anybody at feeding the ball into the post, and he's a guy who can do that, then relocate and get himself open for a jump shot with the way that Trayce has been passing. So I think that's a positive development on a team that depth is at a premium at this point, but being able to have him do that. And if you look at Nebraska's roster, I mean, it's full of transfers, and that's what Hoiberg has really done. So the guys really trying to take it at Leal in large part are 3-4 years older than he is, quite honestly, as you look at some of that. And there are limitations that what he'll be able to do there, but I think he'll be able to get a lot better as he goes through the program. But I think just understanding of where they need to be in positioning and scheme and those kinds of things, he seems to have that down really well for a guy halfway through his freshman season. Chris, any thoughts on Leal? I saw you kind of nodding along as we were talking through him. So I'm sure, as a guy living in Bloomington and a local kid, I'm sure you've got some thoughts.
He just has a really big basketball IQ. He just looks poised out there. I think that's the biggest thing, is that he doesn't look like he's not where he's supposed to be. He was directing people on the floor when he was at the top of the key with the ball at some times. And again, he had 2 turnovers, and one of those, like Coach said, was just a little bit forced late pass. But he does have that ability, that over the top pass for Trayce. And you can see that, I think there was 2 different times tonight where that happened. And one of them was, drew a foul and Trayce went to the foul line. But I think, Leal's got the size, 6'5". He's going to need to be out there a lot, because him and Galloway have that large guard size that we need. And you can kind of see in some of those games where, for the most part, Leal's really dropping into the paint area, and he's not right out on his guy for the most part. And he's, someone who has to be able to kind of collapse into the paint to play play defense if there's like a drive or anything like that. But I think his shooting ability is going to get him a lot more minutes, and I think that Archie trusts him. I mean, I wrote down that he was in right after just under the 16 minute timeout. He came right in. So I think that the trust that Archie has in him is growing tremendously, especially when we saw how much he played against Wisconsin. But I think like Coach said, he plays good defense, but he kind of gets out of position, especially on drives. But that'll change and that'll improve. But he's competent out there. He's smart out there, and I think that's going to earn him a lot of playing time moving forward because we're going to need somebody like that, especially with our upcoming schedule.
Is there two other quick plays, just kind of ways that IU, I don't want to say stole 4 points, because I think both these were good plays, but they both were reviewed, but ended up being 4 points. Galloway gets a tip dunk right before the half. I thought it was a really good, talked about basketball IQ with Leal. I thought you watch the replay of it, you see Galloway, as soon as he drives, start sprinting toward the rim along the baseline, just understanding, hey, I don't have to get back on defense. I don't have to worry about any of that. Came back and got a big bucket there that they reviewed forever, and eventually ruled as good, which I thought was correct. And then the other one was on a baseline inbounds play that lobbed it to TJD. The shot clock kind of went blank, and as opposed to going off, and IU ends up getting that basket counted there. But just a couple like situational buckets that ended up being big. In an 8-point game, you get 4 points off of plays like that. I thought was key in totality. Not the subsequent replay reviews that we were all subjected to, but the actual 4 points that were scored on those plays was good. Coach, any other plays or stretches of play stand out to you, or ones that you took notes about?
No, one of those that goes, you got to win the game from the sideline out of bounds and the baseline out of bounds too. And it's just a wonder to me how they did not think with 1 second with TJD, we have that play. They should have scouted that. And then you just got to arm bar or put two guys on TJD and say, just don't let him get to the middle. We'll take a shot at the 3-point line. And I know it's quick because, it happens somewhat quick. I want to go back to the banner moment, that rebound by Hunter, and then I need some help. I think there was a play again where Hunter also got an offensive rebound, and maybe it wasn't Hunter. I went possession by possession here, and I don't want to take all the time to go back and try to find it. But I'm pretty
sure he had another putback at some point. I'm trying to find it. It was toward the end. It was toward the end of the first half. It was near the end of the first half. He got it. It was the third to last possession on what I tracked that he had a putback.
Yep, you're right. I got him on a rebound. Just great offensive rebound at the end of that first half, and then again at that time when he had a baseline. That was a will play. And again, I know a lot of people want to see us win by 20, and I get that, and you're entitled to that. But when I see Hunter starting to play with confidence, when I see Hunter trying to get down in a stance and guard people, when I see Hunter trying to go to the offensive boards and be physical and score, he had one against Maryland too, where he went through people. That is really, really good for Indiana because his improved play, Leal's improved play. We get Armand Franklin back, and again, all it takes is a couple, 2-3 wins in a row, and you're back in a position where, you're feeling better about the season, and that's why you play the games. We don't want to sit here and judge the games the rest of the way. We play the games to find out who wins and loses. Indiana can win every game, and they can lose every game. But, boy, that play that you mentioned for banner moment, I thought was spot on the reasons why Indiana won the game. And Hunter is just, again, I enjoy watching him play now. I'm not so worried about him. But that play was huge, those two rebounds.
Yeah, I really thought, listening to some of his comments before the game, I think that was yesterday is when the availability was, maybe it was Friday, what was kind of telling where he's at from a mental standpoint, that he's passed some of those hurdles and not worrying about that anymore. And even talked about what you said, the area that he brought up that he feels like he's dropped off the most is on the defensive end, and talked about how he felt like he was a much better defensive player in the past and working toward doing that again. I think that's a positive development for IU. And again, the front court is super thin. Geronimo really struggled again when he was in the game today. They're going to have to get minutes out of Jerome Hunter, and particularly those kinds of rebounding numbers will become really important for him because somebody's got to help shoulder the load. And so you look between him and TJD and Trayce, they ended up with 22 rebounds across the three of them, 11 of those from Trayce, 6 from Hunter, and 5 from Trayce. So I thought a really good performance from him as well. Well, let's go inside the numbers now. And like I said, a little bit of this was a tale of two halves. If you look at the IU shooting numbers, first half, they shot 52.9% from the field, 53.8% from three, and somehow 42.9% from the free throw line. And then in the second half, they picked it up from the free throw line, and everything else went to hell. They were 12 of 18 on free throws in the second half, including 7 of 10 from TJD, which was absolutely huge. But 12 of 31 from the floor for 38.7% and 2 of 11 for three that we talked about before. So I guess that's as good a place to start as any from a statistical perspective. We've talked a little bit about the quality of the shots, but I as I told you guys before the game, my fourth graders lost the game today where we lost by 1 and we're 2 of 10 from the free throw line. So I am not able to speak on free throws right now. But I mean, I really felt like it was an area that IU had gotten better in, but really struggled in the first half, picked it up in the second half. But any thoughts from a shooting percentages perspective, Chris? I'll throw it to you first.
Talking about the free throws, we missed 4 in a row in the first half with Rob and Trayce. But I think, down the stretch, Trayce hit those 4 in a row with under 4 minutes to go to kind of seal it when we needed to. And, he has such a good stroke at the foul line. And then just sometimes it's maddening the way we can, like you said, shoot so well from outside, but shoot so poorly from the foul line. I think, again, we kind of talked about this with the 3-point shooting. It really comes down to who's taking those shots, because if you think about Galloway's 4 attempts, that really not one of them had a chance to go in. And I'm not here to critique his shot or anything like that. I have no business doing that, but it just comes down to who's the person that you want to have, especially earlier in the shot clock, taking those kinds of shots. It's not Trey. I think I saw a stat somebody posted that he was 4 of 21 for the season from 3-point line, and that's just not ideal. But I think that we got in such a role shooting outside that we kind of just settled for it when we got a little stagnant and we weren't moving so well in the second half. But I think that we need to continue to, shoot the ball. We know that Leal can shoot it. We know that Hunter is coming into his own. If Rob's comfortable, I will take 50% from him from behind the arc any game. But I think, to me, we can't settle for it. And I think we have to continue to feed down low, let Trayce get, 14 attempts from the foul line is great, but, get guys ready to get the ball and hopefully have a wide open shot. But it just comes down to making sure that it's a smart shot when the shot clock's when it's more appropriate in the shot clock. But I'm not too terribly disappointed because I like the way we were shooting so well in the first half, but clearly, we have not figured out a way to get out of these offensive funks where we just can't get out of our own way. And that's still a concern as the strenuous leg of the schedule is going to start building up.
Yeah. So as we look at positive numbers, Coach, a few jump out to me. 8 turnovers for the game, including just 2 in the second half. 2 of those 8 turnovers were shot clock violations in the first half. Points off turnovers are pretty much even for both teams. IU out-rebounded Nebraska by 11, 41-30, but most importantly, 12 offensive rebounds led to 16 second chance points, 16-3 in IU's favor. I think both of those numbers were a huge factor in the game. Archie's harped on turnovers over the course of the season, but we can also look back at a few of these recent games and offensive rebounding. I think it was the Maryland game was a big factor in that one as well. So maybe it's matchup dependent. Who knows what it is, but they really were able to get some distance between themselves and Nebraska in a couple different areas of the stat sheet. Second chance points was a big one.
What's nice about that is last year's lineup, you had 2 bigs and you had your small forward was really a power forward who had a nose for the ball rebounding. We don't talk about him very favorably, the young man who's at Arkansas, but he did have a knack for rebounding. So you had 3 people to really go, and that was part of the storyline last year was shoot it up and go get it. And so to see the offensive rebounding coming down when we have, a lesser size is offensive rebounding is will. You track the shot, go get it, fight for it. And that's why I was so impressed with Hunter's and TJD had a nice tip in late, and those are things that in a game where it got tight, and we don't like it being tight, I think that's just good. It's good extra points. You win that rebounding battle. Again, win the out-of-bounds battle. Win the rebounding battle. Don't turn the ball over for a lot of free home runs. And then let's see where everything else plays out. Nebraska got really hot, probably because we weren't guarding as well, and we got real cold and gave up a 21-point swing a little bit at one point. But the stats speak well overall. It's when you go on the road and win by 8. Some of those things are why. Good shooting early, taking care of the basketball, and rebounding the basketball are keys to winning, and that's, again, going to prevail over 40 minutes.
Yeah, if you look up and down individually, you had IU played 9 guys. Geronimo only played 3 minutes, but the other 8 guys outside of him all scored at least 3 points. You had 6 guys with at least 8. Everybody that played grabbed at least 1 rebound, and 6 of the 9 guys that played had at least 1 assist. So I think you did start to see a bit of balance, and were able to get a number of guys involved. 7 of the guys played the bulk of the minutes, but you saw contributions across the team in a number of areas. So I think that was a positive from that standpoint. And we talked a little bit about IU's defense. Coach, you mentioned a timeout IU took, and they really ratcheted things up defensively. Nebraska missed their last 5 field goals and finished 1 of their last 10, which when you look at their overall shooting numbers in the second half, that means at one point they were 13 out of 17. So they ended up 14 of 27 for the half. So, some good and some bad to be mixed in. But any other numbers stand out to you guys as you look across the stat sheet?
I'm going to throw out there just this idea of scoring runs. I don't have them all here, but in a game of basketball, you're going to have runs. What you want to do is have your runs be bigger than the other team's runs. That didn't happen tonight. That is disappointing. When you were up 15, 56-41, and you end up down 3, that is disappointing, a stat of runs. But that happens in the college game. Indiana ends up going plus 11 over the last 4 or 5 minutes after they were down 3 to win by 8. So ultimately, you want the cumulative number of your runs to be better than the other team's runs. And even a team like Nebraska, who is the 14th best team in the Big Ten, has some, Division I talent that has transferred in. And boy, they got going. And they got going more because they felt good about their game, and Indiana was starting to feel a little bit bad about their game. It's more of an intensity mental thing than it is anything about strategy or players that are out there. And Indiana's got to fix that a little bit in order to prevent those bigger runs. But the game is going to go that way. You're going to play hot for a while, and then the other team's going to make an adjustment or get hot for a while. That is always going to happen. You would love to have a 10-point run followed by the other team's 4-point run, then another 10-point run, and stretch it out. And I think the key thing from my coaching background is this. There were some key possessions, both offensively and defensively, where Indiana didn't step up and take the right shots or guard the right way that could have stopped those runs. And that's the teaching point in the film room from here on out. Fellas, we can't do this. Here's where this game would have shut down Nebraska's role. If we would have done these 2 things right offensively, these 2 things defensively, they would have had a 7-8 point run and get them stopped. But that's where you got to go with this program is teams are going to get on a run. What do you do to limit it?
All right. Well, coming up here on the assembly call, we'll hand out our game balls and hit any other lingering storylines, and we'll look ahead to IU's next opponent, and then we'll finish things up with last call. That's all next here on the assembly call. Stick with us.
What's up, y'all? It's Devontae Green giving you the green light to watch Assembly Call after every IU game. Just don't listen to their opinions about shot selection. Remember, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Go Hoosiers.
And welcome back to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. Catch us live immediately following every IU basketball game, plus every Thursday night at our website, assemblycall.com. And while you're there, make sure you sign up for our free IU Hoops email newsletter. Over 7,000 of your fellow IU fans have already subscribed. You can also text IU to 66866 to subscribe to the newsletter. Again, that's IU to 66866. I'm Andy Bottoms here with the coach Brian Tonsoni and Chris Williams, a.k.a. IUArtifacts, and we are breaking down Indiana's 84-76 road win at Nebraska. I will say that we have offered opinions on shot selection during this show, and I picked the Devontae Green drop prior to the game, seeing how it would play out. So we still have opinions on shot selection, despite what that said and who was taking the three-pointers. But what can you do there? All right, so now it's time for game balls. This season, Trayce is the leader with 6 so far. Armand has 2, Race 1, Al 1, and Rob 1. So, Coach, I'll throw it to you first. Who gets your game ball from tonight's game?
I'm going to go with Rob Finney because I thought his aggressiveness early and his three-point shooting. Someone said on the show, and I haven't confirmed, he had a career high with still 4 minutes to go, or at some point or second in the first half. And then also to have an injury and an ankle injury and to gut it out. He has had injuries before, and people have speculated whether, he took too much time back or whether he came back and was passive afterwards. At a time where we needed him to guard, to run the offense, he fought through whatever that landing on that ankle or twisting the ankle and played okay in the second half. And so overall, he got 5 rebounds, his scoring 18 points. I thought this was one of Rob Finney's better games, and I thought without him, we don't win the game.
Chris, what about you?
I want to go with Jerome. I saw something on Twitter talking about how big that baseline rebound and putback was. As Archie called it, the nail in the coffin for their victory. I think that when his confidence is really high, I think he plays at the level that he's capable of, and we know that he's still trying to get back to that. But 21 minutes tonight, no turnovers. He had 6 rebounds. I just think that defensively, he's starting to come into his own. We need him and his size, and I think that as his confidence continues to grow, his on the floor performance is going to be a lot better. The one thing I thought that was surprising, he had no fouls, and we know that he was so out of position in that Wisconsin game in terms of his defense. But to come in with 0 fouls tonight, excuse me, and I just think that's tremendous. And so I would gladly give it to him.
All right. Well, I'm going to go with I'll break the tie here, and I'm going to go with Rob. I think I'm going to probably have Jerome for the next award. I do think what Rob did set the tone, and if you look across the stat sheet, Coach mentioned the 5 rebounds, also led the team with 4 assists. Did have a couple turnovers, but I thought overall, as you said, Coach, was one of his better games, and excited to see him play with confidence, and was relieved, to say the least, to see him back out on the court after halftime. So I'll go with Rob. A great first half performance that got IU off to a good start, and then TJD took it home from there. But we'll go with Rob for the game ball tonight, which takes us to the Mike Roberts Real Hustle Award. That's actually what I was going to give to Jerome Hunter. I think because of those putback baskets and those kinds of things that we talked about. So he ends up with 9 and 6, as I think we mentioned before. Also picked up a steal in 20 minutes, and I thought just continues to. You're seeing multiple guys at least build on positive games and follow those up with another positive game. And for a team that has struggled a lot with consistency, and collectively they struggle with consistency even within this game, it's nice to see Jerome starting to play with more confidence. So, Coach, as a creator of said Mike Roberts Award, who do you give yours to tonight?
Just hearing Mike Roberts makes me happy. I long to go down in the gym and see him again. But now I just watch him on TV and pause it. Jerome Hunter gets the award. I agree. Chris nominated him for game ball, but I could see that as well. I just thought Jerome Hunter's play today was aggressive. I thought he guarded better. Still probably could find some problems on the defensive side with him, but those 2 offensive rebounds, just putbacks, really stand out for me. And the one was at 77-75, or as a 2-point Indiana lead, and stretched it out to 4, and kind of was the start of the dagger to put that game away. We had to hit some free throws afterwards and guard afterwards, but that was such a key to not have to go down and guard, knowing that any shot could tie it up or lose the lead. So, for reasons Chris mentioned for game ball, I think Jerome needs to have the hustle award.
Chris, who's your pick for that?
Well, Coach, I could hear Coach Roberts yell ball pressure all day,
Yeah.
I haven't heard as much.
I would guard.
Yes. I haven't heard as much, nearly surprising with the lack of fans, but I'm actually going to go with Race. And it's just for that singular play where he dove the ball, flipped it to Trayce, and then Trayce found Trey Galloway for that bucket. I think those are the kinds of plays that, are the difference in this ball game in some ways, because you want your guys to be diving on the floor all the time. You want your guys to be doing that. But I think that transition was just amazing. And I think that set the tone early in the first half. And the only reason I'm not going with Jerome is because I don't want to be greedy and give it to both of them. But, I just to piggyback on what you're saying about Jerome, when his confidence, he just has this aura about him. I don't know if that's the best way to describe it, but he just looks so much more comfortable out there. He doesn't look out of place. He looks natural with the ball, and he knows where he's supposed to be. And I think that, if his confidence continues to rise, it gives us better chances, especially with this tough stretch going ahead. But I think both of them played well tonight. So
he's playing with some swagger.
Yes, and
that's good to see.
So before we talk about Purdue coming up on Thursday, Coach, I'm going to throw this question to you. I think one of the themes that we've seen from this team is, I'm not going to call it killer instinct, but the struggles to really put somebody away. You saw him jump out to an 18-point lead tonight almost immediately, just let him right back in the game. I'm not saying you're going to be up by 30 at halftime and do those kinds of things, but if you carry a close to 20-point lead and into the locker room, this game isn't as close as it ends up. You saw that in Wisconsin, tougher place to play. You're on the road, but you're up 6 late. How do you finish that game? Couldn't put Penn State away. Had to win that game in overtime. From a coaching perspective, what does that suggest to you, if anything? I know it's difficult because it's not your team that you're coaching, so I might be putting you in a tough spot. But any thoughts on what that suggests? Because I think if there's one thing that, as you look, we're about halfway through the season right now. We're 13 games in, 14 conference games to play. That is one of the more concerning things about this team is that the struggles in that area. So what does that suggest to you?
Yeah, I think this team under Archie Miller, surprisingly under Archie Miller, has lacked some toughness. One of the things I was excited about Archie Miller coming in here was that he had that reputation of having tough-minded teams. They'd get out and guard you, they'd get out and run, they'd jam it down your throat. And I think whatever the reason, that he's had a hard time with the guys that he's recruited or the guys that he was left, getting them to play like Archie Miller played or Archie Miller would like them to play. Everyone can point their fingers to who's responsible for that, but this team does not reflect the Archie Miller that played at North Carolina State and does not reflect the toughness I think that he wants them to play with for 40 minutes. I think this year is better, and knock on wood, we haven't seen some of the, at Michigan or at Rutgers type of stuff yet where you had your runs and you got beat by 19. Now you've had given up some time and hang your head for not scoring and not have been tough at times. And then Archie's gone in at halftime and ripped them or did whatever. And they've come back and they responded by winning home games or at least playing late. But I do think that when offense goes away, they have a tendency to let down and feel sorry for themselves. I think sometimes they don't have that when they are going well. They're up 15. There's a little bit of relaxation. And what any team, especially in this Big Ten this year, needs is 40 minutes of absolute bulldog all the time. And that, I'm not trying to absolve the coaching staff or anything, because you see Archie at timeouts, at halftimes, you see him trying to get the ball to go in up the court. So it's hard. It's a hard thing as a coach sometimes, depending on the players you have in the program, to get them to have that instinct to play 40 minutes all the time. And as an educator, it's getting harder and harder to find that kind of activity in the classroom, in the society, on the basketball floor. The longer I'm in this thing, it's a lot of fun playing basketball, but it's a lot of work, and that toughness, that work part of it, sometimes is the hardest and the last part to get a collective group to do. Some coaches are really good at doing it and get it done early. This program has lacked that, I thought. But I think it's improving, so I'm not in panic mode. I see it a lot less. Bursts like tonight where you give up that lead, a lot less. And even tonight we still executed offensively and missed shots. We were still there defensively, just got beat by a step. I mean, it wasn't like a total, oh, my gosh, what's happening? This is total awful play. It was just, oh, my gosh, they hit another shot. And so, yeah, I agree. I don't think they have that toughest mentality that they need to really compete at the level. They're going to have to find it real quick for 40 minutes, in my opinion.
All right, so up next on Thursday is Purdue. I believe it is looks like a 7 o'clock tip here. So Purdue got a big road win with a late Trevion Williams bucket against Michigan State on Friday. They will not play again until they play IU on Thursday. Purdue clearly upset someone in the Big Ten scheduling office, or maybe I don't think they've had games rearranged due to COVID, but this is their 5th road game in their last 6 Big Ten games. It looks like, if I'm looking at this correctly, they had to travel to Rutgers, to Illinois, to Michigan State, and now to IU. So they have an identical record as the Hoosiers at this point, 8-5 and 3-3 in the league, and this is. I think Jared wrote in the thing, is this a must win for Archie Miller? I think, again, probably too early to say that, but I got to tell you, I mean, this feels like you can't drop any more home games, at least not one to somebody outside the clear upper echelon of the Big Ten. So, Coach, is somebody who's in Purdue's backyard up there, you might actually be better than I would to kind of give a quick thoughts on Purdue and kind of what they look like this year compared to what they've looked like in the last few years, and certainly feel free to throw in your thoughts on whether this is how much of a must win this is for Archie.
Yeah, hey, follow my Twitter feed. I'm going to join a Northern Indiana podcast to discuss IU Purdue with the Purdue fan Wednesday night. We're going to go a little toe to toe, and I'm going to have some fun. So follow me I don't want to put the plug out on the podcast, but I'll put it in my Twitter feed. Here's the idea. I don't like Purdue. I want to beat them by 20. I don't. I like living up here because I like my house, and I got IUArtifacts stuff hanging all over the basement. If it wasn't for that, I don't like being here. I can't wait to move to Bloomington. I got to retire first and move to Bloomington. I don't like Purdue. I respect them. I think Painter does a good job. I think they run good motion, and when they guard, they're really, really tough. The thing that I think they struggle with when they lose is that they don't guard this year as well as they did. And so, I think it's going to be a tough game. I think the inside presence, what's the 7'5" monster dude Edey going to do? I think we should put him in a lot of ball screens, and it'll be a first test for some of their young guys who are either redshirt freshmen or new freshmen who are counted on to come in. And even though it's not full, Assembly Hall is still going to be a place that hopefully will cause them some problems. But yeah, it's not a must win. I don't buy that. That's for fans wanting to predict what's going to happen down the road. And I think it's a nice win. It puts a little separation. I think Indiana's tied now with Purdue in the Big Ten for 5th or 6th. So that puts you ahead of the 500, 4-3. And again, any win in the Big Ten is necessary. So I'm going to be excited to watch it, and I'm going to be even more excited in the postgame show after we win. I believe we're going to win. I believe we're due for more 40-minute, better performances, collective performances than what we've had, and that's just maybe hopeful, wishful thinking. But I think this team has the capability of putting it together and getting a 4 or 5 game winning streak going, even in a tough Big Ten, and I hope that I'm right.
So Chris, as the man on the scene in Bloomington, in the case of the three of us, what I do think this does become an important game for Archie. I think the narrative of him needing to beat Purdue is one thing. I also think where this game falls in IU's schedule makes it that much more important to win, because you've already dropped the home game to Northwestern, and the Big Ten schedule set up for IU a lot more favorably than it did for Purdue to kind of get out to a good start. So how do you assess maybe how you feel about how important it is to Archie, and maybe just as much how other people around Bloomington view it?
Well, we haven't beaten. We've lost 10 of the last 11 to Purdue, which is something that I don't like Purdue at all. I'm equally with Coach on that, but that one stings even more. The fact that this team, we've had some winnable games. We've had some games where we didn't show up, like last year when Coach Knight was there. But I'm not going to call it a must win, but I would say it's going to be, for a program standpoint and a season standpoint, especially like you said, with what's coming up on the schedule, this daunting, schedule coming up in the next few weeks. I think if we can get Travion Williams in foul trouble and obviously keep Trayce out of foul trouble guarding Travion Williams, I think that's the key to the game. But I think from a momentum standpoint, given the fact that, what we have coming up where, we have 2 straight road games against, 2 teams that I think that can give us a lot of difficulty in matching up wise. I think that, again, like Coach said, we need everybody to show up, and it needs to be a 40-minute effort. If we have a lapse of 8 minutes where our offense goes down the tube, we're done, and we don't have the shooting ability consistently to come back from that deficit. But if we come out and we're playing against our arch nemesis with intensity, then I think we can win the game. And like Coach said, it's not a full assembly hall, although, man, I wish I was there, but it's still an intimidating place to play, regardless if fans are going to be there or not. So I think it's going to be a tough matchup. I hope we win. I think it would be a good victory, and people could get the Archie hasn't beaten Purdue, put that narrative to rest.
All right, you're listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show, and remember to check out our friends at Home Field Apparel to get the perfect gift for the college sports fan in your life or yourself. Use the promo code Assembly20 at checkout to get 20% off your entire order. And guys, it's time for last call. I know this is probably this felt like maybe a game that IU could win handily. We could get in and out with the postgame show, and here we are over an hour. So, Chris, I'll throw this to you first for final thoughts on IU's 84-76 win over Nebraska tonight.
I mean, again, it was Nebraska. You could see the talent deficiencies that they have, but they also came in, especially in that second half, and that team was fired up. And we got to be able to respond better when our defense is not working, our transition defense is not working, because if we're going to struggle against a team like that, and then it's going to be a really, really difficult next couple of games. So I'm hoping that we come out with the fire like we did against Wisconsin. And from this point forward, I think we can do it. But we got to be able to continue to feed Trayce, and we can't be settling for jump shots, and we need Trayce to play with the fire and tenacity that we know he's capable of. And that'll really dictate how things are going to go. But I'd like to be optimistic that we're going to turn a corner.
Coach, final thoughts on this one from you?
Yeah, for a long period of time, it looked like it was going to be a 15, 20-point lead, and then things kind of fell apart and everyone got worried. And then Indiana went on an 11-0 run at the end. So, an 8-point win. Indiana's 14, 15 points better than them on the road. It just turned out to be a little less than that. I think the line was 6.5. So the people who have a lot at risk on this thought, Indiana was only favored by 6.5 points. You got to take a step back and look at, there was a lot of good things. We brought up a lot of good things. And from a coaching perspective, you coach to perfection. So tomorrow in the film room, you're going to point out a lot of the things that we did, guarding your yard, guarding your bounce on the dribble, not overhelping in situations like that, not fouling the drive defensively. And then, again, evaluate offensively, what's a good shot, what's not a good shot. I think the biggest thing for me is to try to get some players to understand early in the shot clock, move the basketball is the most important thing going forward. Trey's got to take threes at some point late in the shot clock, or at least to show people he's willing to, or he'll never get guarded. But I think he's trying to make things happen too fast. But overall, again, we're sitting here with a 500 record right now, and I feel we're only one. The Northwestern game's the only game that really sticks with me that's negative. You change that around to 9-4, 4-2 in the Big Ten, losing close games in overtime, losing on the road, losing to a top number 1 seed, I think, Texas. we're feeling a little bit better, so let's beat Purdue and then go get one from one of the bigger ones to balance out that loss to Northwestern. And we're kind of where I think most people would have said that we're at. So stay the course. It is Indiana. It's not the people here next door to me. And for that, you should be forever blessed that you are on this show and not following some of that crap that comes in here in West Lafayette. So ups and downs, don't ever lose focus of that you've made the right selection, people in the chat mob, of listening to this show and following the Indiana Hoosiers, even in down times. Go Hoosiers.
Yeah, from my perspective, I'll try to take the hopefully not overly optimistic viewpoint. I think if you want to be frustrated with this team, the frustrations are the inconsistency and the lack of being able to really close people out and shut things down late. I think one of the things that contributes to that lack of consistency and maybe an inability to extend leads is because you haven't had enough guys that you really were able to feel comfortable with that they were playing well at a given moment. And I think it's not great to have your second leading scorer sidelined, but I think it has forced some other guys to step up in moments. And some of these guys were already starting, but you've seen improved play from Al and from Rob, more aggressive play from those guys. You've seen Jerome Hunter. We talked about him a lot. You've seen improvements from Anthony Leal. And so when all the pieces come back together, and who knows when Armand's going to be back, you don't know whether he'll be available for Purdue or not. You got another few days to figure that out. But I think if you want to take the positive viewpoint of this and just step back and say, hey, they won a game they had to win on the road, the most winnable road game on their schedule, and you got that taken care of. And on the way to doing that, you've started to see other guys be able to contribute in ways they weren't doing, and they weren't doing consistently earlier in the season. So you got to hope that those things start to pay dividends when you get into a really tough stretch of play, which is kind of starts this week, but then you get into that crazy stretch where you've got Iowa, Rutgers, Michigan, Illinois, Iowa again within a 5-game span. So, if you want to look at this positively, and quite honestly, at this point, I'd much rather look at it that way than the other way around, as much as I might get frustrated in the overall flow of the game. I think those are things that you can get excited about in terms of those guys making contributions. So this team will go as far as Trayce Jackson-Davis takes them, and they need more consistent performances from him in the game than what they saw tonight. But I think being able to have guys who have stepped up in supporting roles and stepped up to pick up the slack with Armand being out is a positive. And if you step back and look at some of these games without getting into if you told me they'd take Wisconsin to double overtime on the road, you'd feel pretty good about it. You don't love how the game played out. It's not a moral victory. If you told me they win by 8 on the road against Nebraska, maybe that might be less than I would think. But again, as Coach said, it was around what the spread would be. It was just watching the game and the moments in it where they ebb and flow and play well at times and not as well at others can be frustrating. But I think when you take a step back and look at where they are and who's coming on and playing well, I think there's reason to be positive. At least that's given me reason to be positive as much as it was frustrating at times. So we'll see what happens on Thursday night against Purdue. I think a win there would go a long way toward making a whole lot of people feel better, but we'll talk about that then. And so for now, that'll do it for this edition of the Assembly Call IU Postgame Show. If you want to see us do the show live and be part of the live chat, make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/assemblycall. And don't forget to go to assemblycall.com or text IU to 66866 to join our free email newsletter. Special thanks to longtime listener Bob Thompson, who produced much of the music you hear on the show. And thank you for listening. We'll be back to talk IU Hoops again with you on Thursday night. Until then,
take it from me, Nick Zeisloft. Keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim. And as always, go Hoosiers.
Thank everybody for coming out.
All right, I got to get out of here, folks. Thank you.
All righty. Thank you, fellas. That ended up being a little bit longer than we thought, but no win is a simple win with this team. I don't think so. Always something to talk through.
Hey, tonight wasn't one of them, Andy. But Indiana has 4 quad 1 and quad 2 wins. Virginia has 0.
True.
Duke has 0. Michigan State only has 2.
Kentucky has 0 too.
Yeah.
No, they got one.
They got one. I think.
They have one. That's right. That's right.
They might have snuck 1 or 2 out. So not that's where Indiana needs to be, but
yeah. Purdue game would be a big one to get, and Michigan State looks Doesn't look that great. Boy, that other stretch, though. That stretch of those other 5 games. Holy jeez.
Rutgers is starting to struggle.
Yeah, they really are, too. Ohio State's kind of got their number.
Yeah, Rutgers has hung their hat on guarding, and they're not guarding this year as well. And I think Ohio State, while, a lot of people were in love with Ohio State at the beginning of the year, I haven't been impressed. The team that's really been more than I thought was Michigan. Michigan's really played well.
Yeah, I've been impressed in the stretches of them that I've watched for sure. Which, I didn't know recruiting all that closely, but Hunter Dickinson, he's been outstanding. So, oh well, we'll see what happens.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks, Chris. I was a little worried after. I forget which of the losses did you come on? It was 2 in a row.
Oh yeah, I had the dreaded blue screen on my laptop, and
was that the Northwestern game that you were on though?
Yes. Oh gosh.
Yeah, it was that one. I wasn't gonna.
If we had lost tonight, it was going to be my last show because there's something about me being on the post game and the losses. I was.
Yeah, I didn't want to have to. I didn't want to have to do it, talk about it regardless. But I certainly didn't want to have to talk about it after you had to come on against. Certainly at the time, that seemed like a really surprising loss. So Northwestern's losing a little bit of steam as well. But
3 in a row.
Yeah, that was not good. So we'll see. Hopefully things go well on Thursday night, and that'll be a little more pleasant. I don't know who. I think I'm going to be on. Coach, it might be you, me, and Ryan, maybe.
Yeah, I'm available. So
I'm not sure. So. Anyway, we'll figure it out. It's way too far off to plan for me at this point. So we'll get it figured out. But Chris, thanks for being on.
Yeah, good
Coach,
talking with you guys.
Appreciate it as always. Glad to give you a break from hosting after the other night. So,
well, I had one of those Chris.
All right, take care, Chris.
So I was hosting, and then all of a sudden my TVs went out and everything went out like 2 minutes before the tip off from last Thursday's game. But luckily it recovered. So.
Yeah,
it's always nice to know the pressure's not on.
Absolutely. All right. Well, cool. Well, thanks, Coach. Thanks,
right. Say
Chat
hi to
Mom.
everyone, Andy, your wife, and kids.
All right, you do the same. Thanks, Chat Mom. Enjoy it. Everybody have a good start to the week. We'll talk to you on Thursday.